You know that feeling when you send a text and the exact second it goes, you see a typo?
Oh, yeah.
Or even worse, you realize the tone is completely off and you're just staring at your phone, wishing you could somehow reach in and pull it back.
The instant regret, we've all been there. It's a universal human experience.
Right. You just wish you had a backspace key for reality. But here's the thing. Standard AI models, the ones we use every day like GPT or Claude, they don't have a backspace key either.
That is a really great way to put it. They're what we call autoregressive. So once they predict a token, a word, or part of a word, that's it. It's set in stone.
They're committed.
They're committed, and they just have to move on. They can't, turn the car around.
But today, we're looking at something that, well, it breaks that rule. We're talking about a model that drafts and pauses and reconsiders and actually edits its own work before it's done.
It's called LLaDA2.1 Mini.
And it represents a shift to what's known as a diffusion language model.
And honestly, it is a little weird, but in the best possible way.
So to get through this weirdness, we're going to walk through a really hands-on article. It was published on Binary Verse AI.
The title is LLaDA 2.1 Mini, Ubuntu Installation and Diffusion Inference Guide.
And what I like about this source is that it just cuts through all the hype. It's not some graduate-level seminar full of Greek letters, but it's also not a paste this and pray it works tutorial.
No, it's like a mechanics manual. It's about getting this thing running on your own machine and, more importantly, understanding why this whole architecture just changes the game.
So our mission today is pretty simple. We're going to go through this article heading by heading. We'll cover the install for sure. But the real value here is understanding the knobs this model gives you.
Exactly, because when you switch from, just predicting the next word to diffusing a thought, the controls are completely different.
Okay, so let's jump right into heading 1. LLaDA 2.1 LLaDA2 Mini mix paragraph. The article starts by drawing a really hard line between autoregressive and diffusion. We've touched on it, but let's define it. Why is that distinction so important?
Sure. So 99% of the LLMs you interact with are autoregressive. Think of it like a live TV broadcast.
Okay.
The anchor starts a sentence, and every single word they say is live. They can't take it back. They have to steer the sentence to some kind of logical conclusion based on what they've already said.
Which is probably why sometimes they just paint themselves into a corner.
Yes.
They start a sentence confidently, realize halfway through it's going totally wrong, and then they just start to hallucinate to try and save face.
Precisely. They're committed to that path. Now, LLaDA 2.1 Mini works more like a writer with a rough draft.
Okay.
It doesn't generate one word at a time in order. It just throws a whole block of noise. I mean, they're basically random placeholders onto the page. Then, in parallel, it starts refining them all at once.
So it might guess the end of the sentence before it even knows the beginning.
It might. And because it's doing this all at once, it can look at the whole thing and say, wait a minute, the word I put at the start doesn't really match the word I put at the end. And this is the magic part. It can go back and change the beginning.
That's the backspace key we were talking about.
It is. It's retroactive editing. It's not just predicting, it's iterating. And because the behavior is different, the way we control it is different. You don't just have temperature anymore.
Right.
You have these new parameters: threshold, editing threshold, and block length.
Which we will absolutely get to because those knobs are fascinating. But before the software, we have to talk about the hardware. Heading 2, hardware baseline and realistic minimums.
The reality check.
Yeah. It's called Mini, LLaDA 2.1 Mini.
Yeah.
So naturally I'm thinking, great, I can run this on my MacBook or my old gaming PC, right? Mini usually means lightweight.
Yeah. You need to drop that optimism immediately. The article is brutally honest here. It says, let's not romanticize this.
The baseline they quote is,
It's heavy.
it's an NVIDIA RTX 6000 ADA generation, which has 48 gigabytes of VRAM.
48.
That is a professional workstation card, not something you just, pick up at Best Buy.
Correct. And the guide points out that the expected usage during inference is around 47 gigs.
So you have 1 gigabyte of breathing room. That's terrifying.
It is razor-thin margins. The author has this great line that stuck with me. CUDA OOM out of memory is not a personality test, it's just arithmetic.
Huh.
You can't charm your way out of it. It fits or it crashes.
But why? Why does a mini model need that much RAM? It seems so excessive compared to other models this size.
Well, it comes back to that parallel drafting. An autoregressive model just needs to think about one token at a time. This model is trying to hold a massive block of tokens in memory, plus all the alternate possibilities it's considering all at once.
I see.
It trades compute time for memory intensity. It needs a huge workspace to spread out its draft.
Okay, so if I don't have $10,000 for an RTX 6000, am I just out of luck? The article's subheading 2.1 talks about escape hatches.
Right. There are a few options. You can change the data type. The guide suggests switching from bfloat16 to float16.
What does that do?
It's a bit more compatible with older cards, might save a tiny sliver of space, but it's mostly about stability.
And what about offloading? Using my system RAM. I've got plenty of that.
You can, but the article warns you that you're turning your PCIe bus into the main character.
I love that phrase. Main character energy is usually not a good thing in engineering.
No, it means you're just constantly moving data back and forth between the GPU and your normal RAM. That connection is a tiny straw compared to the fire hose inside the GPU. So yeah, it'll run, but it becomes a slideshow. You lose the one advantage this model has, which is speed.
The other option mentioned is reducing the block length.
This is probably the most practical fix for most people. If you tell the model, hey, don't try to draft 128 tokens at once, just do 64, you slash the memory requirement. You're just asking it to take smaller bytes.
But does that hurt the quality?
It can, yeah. If the byte is too small, it starts to lose context. It's like trying to write a novel by only looking at one sentence at a time. But hey, it's better than crashing.
Speaking of quality versus speed, let's look at subheading 2.2, benchmarks. This is really interesting because usually a model just, well, it has a score. But here, the score depends on how you run it.
Exactly. They compare a speed mode versus a quality mode. On the Human Evil Plus benchmark, which tests coding, speed mode gets an 80.49. Quality mode jumps up to 82.93.
That's a pretty significant bump in the benchmark world.
It is. And it highlights a key insight here. With diffusion models, quality is a dial, not a cliff. You can choose to spend more time thinking to get a better answer.
Whereas a standard LLM just gives you what it gives you.
Pretty much. Here, patience actually pays off.
All right, let's say we've got the hardware or we're willing to melt our GPU trying. Heading 3, create a clean working folder.
This sounds so trivial, but the advice here is gold. Keep this boring. Boring is reproducible.
I feel like that should be tattooed on every developer's arm.
It probably should. The guide just recommends a tiny, isolated workspace. Put your script, the app.py in there, but let Hugging Face manage all the massive model weights in its own cache.
Don't clutter up the project folder.
Right. Keep the logic separate from the data. It keeps your backup small and your sanity intact.
Okay, so moving to heading 4, install prerequisites. This is usually where we just kind of glaze over pip install, but it sounds like there are landmines here.
The Museum of Regrets, as the article calls it. The biggest warning is about trust remote code.
Yeah, can you explain that? Because usually security best practices are, never trust remote code.
And that is generally very good advice. But here, you don't have a choice. LLaDA 2.1 Mini isn't just a bag of weights that fits into the standard library. It has custom code for that whole diffusion process, the drafting, the editing, the noise.
Okay.
That code lives in the model's repo. If you don't flag trust remote code, true, the model is just a paperweight. It literally won't know how to run itself.
And the second landmine.
Version mismatch. If your CUDA drivers, the software that talks to your GPU, and your PyTorch version don't agree, they will not negotiate politely. It just works. Or it crashes instantly with some cryptic error.
So use a virtual environment.
Please, Venvi, Conda, UV, whatever. Don't blow up your whole system.
Okay, environment is set. Now the code. Heading 5.
Yeah.
Create app.py. The article gives us a script. It's surprisingly short.
It is, which is good. It's minimal. It just loads the model, sets that trust flag we talked about, and then sets up a prompt.
And the prompt in the code is a math problem. Calculate 1 plus 5 280.5 200.
Which seems simple, but it's a specific stress test. It forces the model to perform operations in the correct order.
But if you look at the bottom of the script, this is where the magic lives. We see variables like gen length, block length, and threshold.
That is the cockpit. In a normal LLM script, you'd see a temperature and maybe top. Here, you're seeing the variables that control the diffusion process. You are literally defining the physics of how the text forms.
So we save the script. Now heading 6, test #1 math smoke test. We run it.
And the first run is the coffee break run. It has to download those 48 gigs of weights. But once it starts, we're looking for one thing.
The number is 208.
Correct. If the output is -208, you pop the champagne. It means your GPU, the drivers, the Python environment, and that custom code all shook hands and agreed on reality.
It's a sanity check. Before we ask it to write poetry, let's just make sure it can do basic subtraction.
Exactly. If it can't do the math, the poetry isn't going to be very good either.
But the next test is where it gets really cool. Heading 7. Test #2, logic puzzle.
This is where we actually see the diffusion in action. The prompt changes to a logic puzzle. Alice, Bob, and Carol are standing in a line. Alice is not at the front. Bob is not at the back. Carol is not in the middle. Who is where?
Now, if I run this on a normal chatbot, the answer just appears. But the article describes something different happening in the console here.
Right. You get to see its internal monologue. You see lines like diffusion step 316, refining predictions,
Yeah.
and applying retroactive corrections.
That is wild. You are actually watching it think.
You're watching it struggle. It might draft Alice, Bob, Carol at first. Then, in the next step, the model checks the constraints. It realizes, wait, Bob can't be at the back, so it goes back and swaps them. It changes Carol to Alice, and Alice to Carol.
And the final result should be Carol, Bob, Alice.
And if you see that, you know the model isn't just guessing. It is actively doing constraint satisfaction. It's checking its own work against the rule if you gave it.
That ability to check its work brings us to heading 8, which I think is the most critical part of this whole discussion. Understand the diffusion generation knobs.
Yes.
You've mentioned them, but let's really break them down. This is the user manual for the model's brain. First, 8.1 block length. What does this do to the generation?
Okay, think of this as the size of your shovel. It's how many words the model tries to dig up at once.
Okay.
If you set this to 128, the model is trying to draft a massive paragraph in one single go.
Pros and cons.
Well, a big shovel moves dirt fast, so it's quicker, but its heavy uses way more VRAM, and it can be messier. If you try to draft too much at once, the coherence might slip a little.
All right. Next, heading 8.2 threshold.
This is the confidence meter. When the model starts, everything is just noise, it's blurry. As it iterates, it gets more and more sure that a certain blob of noise is the word apple. The threshold is the line where the model says, okay, I am 90% sure this is apple, so I'm locking it in. I'm done thinking about this word.
So if you set that threshold too low,
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. The model locks in words way too early before it's really thought them through. You get gibberish or stuttering.
and if it's too high,
It becomes neurotic. It's never sure enough, so it just keeps redrafting and redrafting until it runs out of steps. It's slow and might fail to produce anything because it was too afraid to commit.
now, heading 8.3 editing threshold, the article calls this the coolest knob.
This is the game changer. I'd call it the humility knob.
The humility knob.
Yeah.
I like that.
If you set this to 0.0, the model is arrogant. Once it drafts a word, it assumes it's right and never looks back. But if you set it to, say, 0.5, you are telling the model, hey, if while you're writing the end of the sentence, you realize the beginning doesn't make sense anymore, go back and fix it.
That is the retroactive editing.
Yes, it allows for a coherence that emerges over time. It's the difference between a stream of consciousness rant and a carefully edited email.
And finally, heading 8.6 gives us some presets. Speedish and quality-ish.
These are great starting points. Speedish keeps the thresholds low, turns editing off. It's for when you just need text on the screen fast. Quality-ish cranks the confidence requirement up to 0.7 and enables editing. It takes longer, but the output is way more robust.
It's incredible that we have this level of control now. Before we just crossed our fingers, now we can actually tune the personality of the generation.
It transforms us from just prompt engineers into, I guess, cognitive engineers. We aren't just telling it what to think, but how to think.
But of course, this is bleeding edge tech, so things will break. Heading 9, troubleshooting. What are the common problems?
Well, we already covered the main one, OM, out of memory. If that happens, shrink your shovel, lower the block length.
Heading 9.2 mentions B float 16 errors.
Yeah, some older hardware just hates that data type. It's not a big deal. You just edit the script to say float 16. The article calls it a compatibility switch, not a culture war. Just flip it and move on.
And what about stuttering? Heading 9.5. If the model starts repeating the
Classic symptom. That means your threshold is too low. The model is locking in the because it's a super common word, and then it gets stuck in a loop because it stopped thinking too early. You need to raise the threshold, force it to be more sure before it speaks.
Heading 10 collects practical notes from threads. There's a big one about CPUs.
It's not really a debate, it's more of a warning label. People ask, can I run this on my CPU? And the answer is yes, if you hate yourself.
Why is it so bad? I mean, I run other LLMs on my CPU sometimes.
Because CPUs are serial processors. They do one thing after another really fast. GPUs are parallel. They do 1,000 things at once. Diffusion is inherently parallel.
Ah.
It wants to draft 100 tokens at the same time. A CPU trying to do that is like one guy trying to play an entire orchestra by running between instruments. It just doesn't work well.
Got it. Stick to the GPU. There's also a note on throughput versus latency.
This is more for the production nerds. If you want the user to see text now, you tune for latency, for speed. If you want the absolute best answer and the user can wait 5 seconds, you tune for quality. The knobs map directly to those business needs.
Okay, so we've played with the script, we've seen the math, the logic. Heading 11 suggests run as a local LLM server with SGLang.
This is the graduation ceremony. Running Python app.py is fine for testing. But if you want to connect this to a web UI or an agent or your own code, you need a server.
And SGLang lets you serve this over HTTP.
Exactly. It just wraps the model in a standard API. So you can send a request to your local machine and get a diffused response. This is how you take it from a science experiment to a piece of actual infrastructure.
Finally, heading 12, quick next steps checklist. Because we shouldn't just run it once and quit.
No, that's just the easy dopamine, as the article says. The checklist is your homework. Number 1, pin your environment. Save the exact versions of everything you used because an update next week will break this.
Number 2, log your VRAM usage.
Know your limits. If you know you peak at 47 gigs, you know not to open Chrome while running the model.
Number 3, try a coding task.
Yeah, see if that self-correction helps it write better Python.
And number 4, which I think is the most fun, compare speed versus quality modes on the same prompt.
This is crucial. Run the same prompt twice. Feel the difference. Watch how the quality mode pauses, backtracks, and fixes the output. It's one thing to know it intellectually. It's another thing to see the result change because the model was allowed to fix its own mistakes.
The article wraps up with a call to action. Record your findings, share them.
Yeah. We're in the very early days of diffusion LLMs. If you get this running, you're effectively a beta tester for the future of AI. Your error logs help everyone.
So, zooming out, what we're seeing is a pretty significant shift here. We're moving away from predicting the next word to drafting and refining concepts.
It changes the relationship, you know? We're not just dealing with a probability machine anymore. We're dealing with a system that has some rudimentary form of, I guess, second guessing.
It makes you wonder. I mean, humans don't just blurt out the first statistically probable word. Well, some of us do.
The ones we don't invite back to parties, sure.
But generally, we draft, we pause, we correct ourselves before we speak. If a model can edit itself before showing you the answer, does that make it more human-like than the giant models we use today?
It certainly feels closer to how thought actually works. Thinking isn't a straight line. It is a messy loop of drafting and revising. And LLaDA 2.1 Mini is, I think, the first step toward an AI that mimics that messy, beautiful process.
That is a massive thought to chew on. If you have the hardware, specifically that monster GPU, or even just the curiosity to see the code, check out the article on binary verse AI. It sounds like a tough install, but it definitely sounds like it's worth a headache.
Absolutely. It is a glimpse of what is coming next.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for listening, and good luck with those VRAM limits.